An IRS whistleblowers testifying before the House Oversight Committee yesterday, accusing the Department of Justice of interfering with the Hunter Biden investigation.
Our investigation was constantly hamstrung, limited, and marginalized by DOJ officials as well as other U.S. attorneys. I still think that a special counsel is necessary for this investigation.
Prosecutors instructed investigators not to ask about the big guy or dad when conducting interviews. Investigators were not allowed to follow up on WhatsApp messages from Hunter Biden's Apple iCloud backup, where he suggested he was sitting next to his father.
Meanwhile, Democrats on the committee tried to make the hearing all about former President Donald Trump.
What America needs to understand is that the only political interference at play here is coming from Donald Trump and my Republican colleagues.
We are here today because Donald Trump is exerting an influence campaign.
Joining me right now is Pennsylvania Congressman Scott Perry. He's the chairman of the House Freedom Caucus and a member of the House Oversight, Foreign Affairs, and Infrastructure Committees. Congressman, it's good to see you this morning. What was going on with your Democrat colleagues? Are they not acknowledging what these bank records have shown regarding the Biden family?
That's exactly right, Maria. They just they shifted the conversation every single opportunity that they had an opportunity to question. They essentially accept the evidence, and that evidence shows that the FBI and the IRS not in concert with the House of Representatives, did their own investigation years long and determined that the Bidens received over $17 million. And then, as they got close to actually charging with multiple felonies, the Department of Justice made sure that the defendant, in this case Hunter Biden, or his attorneys, was tipped off. It is unprecedented. These two individuals with impeccable credentials, not interested in being in the limelight, not political whatsoever, in frustration, have come, have revealed these facts, and the red lines for them was the obstruction. They were seeking justice. They were seeking the truth. The obstruction into their investigation by the Department of Justice or officials at the FBI or the IRS. It's incredible. It's incredible news.
Well, I mean, the Democrats will completely ignore it. I don't understand that. I mean, isn't this something that both sides should agree on, that we don't want someone in the White House who's accepting money from foreign nationals and paying himself while making policy decisions on behalf of America? I mean, isn't this obvious?
It is obvious, and it's also obvious what the Biden family had to sell. They did no work. They actually have no legitimate companies. They had a bunch of shell companies to launder the money, but what they were selling was access to American foreign policy or policy in general, and making changes in that policy to fit the needs of these foreign individuals, countries, what have you, that were having a problem with American policy. Yes, both sides should be concerned about it, but the Democrats immediately either went to Trump or some other thing to discredit these two whistleblowers who have put everything on the line. Their careers are in jeopardy, their lives are in jeopardy, and maybe potentially their lives are ruined just for telling the truth. Democrats don't want to have anything to do with it. They're going to apparently protect Joe Biden no matter what he's done, including selling out the very country that they pledge allegiance to.
Wow, that's just incredible. Constitutional law professor Jonathan Turley writes in the New York Post this morning, Joe Biden hit hard in whistleblower hearing by Democrat Dan Goldman. Turley is referring to this moment when Goldman asked Shapley about whether Joe Biden was part of Hunter Biden's business deals. Watch this.
Hunter told his dad, according to Rob Walker, quote, I may be trying to start a company or try to do something with these guys. That doesn't sound much like Joe Biden was involved in whatever Hunter Biden was doing with the CEFC.
But it does show that he told his father he was trying to do business.
So, Congressman, tell me about that moment and what you think came out of it.
Well, what it shows is, first of all, that Dan Goldman's a complete hack. He was involved in the impeachment of Donald Trump as an attorney, was trying to do everything he can to protect Joe Biden and remove Joe Biden from the conversation, which involves a Chinese Communist Party official doing business with Joe Biden's son. And Dan Goldman was just literally carrying the water, trying to say that there's absolutely no connection whatsoever. Meanwhile, everybody in the room knows that that was the connection. That is the connection. That Joe Biden literally and absolutely lied to the American people when he said he didn't know anything about his son's business dealings. Not only did he know, but he was involved.
So where is this going now, Congressman? I mean, at the end of the day, it's two sides back and forth. House Republicans, I know, are debating how they can hold the Department of Justice accountable. Here's Florida Congressman Corey Mills and Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer yesterday on this program. Watch this. You can send a lot of letters and you can talk a lot about the injustice that this appears to be.
We need to impeach Merrick Garland.
I'm sorry?
We need to impeach Merrick Garland for his abuse of power and the utilization of the DOJ.
Are you expecting that Merrick Garland will be impeached?
Well, I would certainly vote for that. I'm not in charge of investigating Merrick Garland. If they can prove that he's been dishonest with the American people and led a two-tier system of justice, then I think that we'll certainly have a vote.
So what happens now, Congressman?
Well, look, the other thing about this is, of course, it shows the Department of Justice tipped the scales and obstructed justice. Let me just say that the Department of Justice obstructed justice, whether it was Merrick Garland or the United States Attorney in the district or somebody else. That's what happened. Now we have a separate investigation into that. How far that leads, we don't know. But if it does lead to Merrick Garland, it certainly does. It does require impeachment. I've got articles of impeachment already drafted for Merrick Garland for other issues regarding weaponized DOJ against parents. But that having been said, this opens up a whole nother line of impeachment, not only for the Department of Justice, but potentially for Joe Biden.
All right. We will watch. Congressman, thanks very much for being here this morning.
Thank you.
Congressman Scott Perry
God bless
joining
you.
us.